Hello dear students, welcome back to this tele and radio tutoring alternative English class with me Esther Zutsobio. In today's class we will be doing the drama The Boy Comes Home by A. Milne. A. Milne, his full name is Alan Alexander Milne. He was an English poet best known for his book about a teddy bear, Winnie the Pooh. Winnie the Pooh is a book which consists of a collection of stories for children, which features various animals and animated versions of toys. He also wrote a number of books, humorous verses, and light comedies. He had a flair for writing from his early childhood. He was so creative that he turned some of his sketches into novels. Milne was a noted writer primarily as a playwright before the huge success of Pooh overshadowed all his previous work. A few of his light comedies have made huge success on stage, especially Mr. Pym Passes Away and The Dover Rod are the best among his plays and are popular for half a century after it was published. Milne served in both World Wars, joining the British Army in World War I and as the captain of the British Home Guard in World War II. About the play. The Boy Comes Home is a one-act play. It is a comedy that discusses many serious issues in a light manner. Now, what is a comedy? Comedy is a genre of fiction, a work generally intended to be humorous by inducing laughter. It is something that brings out happiness and joy in us. The title of the drama, The Boy Comes Home, refers to a boy who came back home after being in the army for 4 years and how he matures and how he became more responsible, more confident, and more brave. And how he expected his guardian, that is his uncle, to treat him when he came back home. He expected his uncle to treat him like a responsible man now and not like a little boy that he used to. So the theme of the play is generation gap, where the older generation always thinks that the younger generation does not know anything and therefore they constantly need to guide the younger generation. Now, when Philip joined the army during the war, it affected him a lot as a person. He became more matured and confident enough to take decisions of his own. He has transformed himself from a little boy to a responsible young man. Being in the army was a challenging and a tough one because he had to get up early in the morning and strictly follow the rules and strictly follow the routines laid down being in the army and to fight battles and so on. After coming back home, he wishes to relax and enjoy life. He wishes to get up whenever he wanted to. He wishes to do all the things that he had been yearning for, the things that he couldn't do while he was in the army, when life has been tough for them or him in particular. Now, Uncle James, who thinks highly of discipline, is disappointed when Philip does not follow it. Philip, the representative of the young, wishes to enjoy his freedom after 4 years of strict discipline at the war front. So the characters that we will see in the drama is Philip, Uncle James, Aunt Emily, and Mrs. Higgins. Philip is the 23-year-old man who just returned home from war after 4 years. Uncle James is Philip's guardian. He is a very strict and disciplined man. Aunt Emily is James' wife, a good and kind-hearted person who loves her nephew Philip dearly. Mary is the parlor maid, and Mrs. Higgins is the cook. So now let's dive into the drama. Philip has just returned home from war after 4 years. On the very first morning, he didn't get up early in the morning like he used to when he was in the army. He gets up at 10 o'clock, enters the dining room, looking for breakfast. Now, Uncle James keeps a strict discipline in the house. According to his orders, breakfast is served at 8 o'clock sharp. Still then, Philip orders Mary, the parlor maid, to bring him his breakfast, though Mary was reluctant as she knew that the cook will never break the rule of the house. But still then, Philip forces Mary to bring. Therefore, Philip left the room to go and talk to Mrs. Higgins, the cook, to bring Philip's breakfast. As Mary leaves the room, following Philip's orders, Aunt Emily enters. She cares about Philip a lot. She started inquiring about his experiences being in the army. Philip narrates his experiences. Then Aunt Emily asked whether he had his breakfast. The conversation was going on. Then comes Mary, telling the aunt that Mrs. Higgins wants to talk to her. But Philip orders Mrs. Higgins to come to the room instead. Mrs. Higgins enters. She was very angry because Philip has ordered for breakfast after the usual timing. Philip gets annoyed and once again demands for his breakfast. Mrs. Higgins strongly replied back, saying, "Breakfast is always served at 8 o'clock sharp, and it will never be served before 8 or after 8, following the rule of the house." Now, Mrs. Higgins argued, saying, if the rule of the house has been altered or changed, she demands for a month's notice in advance. Philip reacted to this quickly by taking out a check, handed it over to Mrs. Higgins, and tells her to quit the job. Mrs. Higgins was surprised to get this reaction from Philip, and at last she agreed to the matter, saying, "If it's only a bit of breakfast, I don't say but what I mightn't get it if I'm asked decent." And saying that, she left the room to prepare his breakfast. Now, Aunt Emily was surprised to see the changed behavior in Philip. She could see that Philip is now a matured and a confident young lad. She is kind of happy that Philip is really grown up now and knows how to get things done. She is happy to see that Philip is more confident and more sure of himself now. Philip leaves to have his breakfast. At that point of time, Uncle James enters the room and tells his wife Emily that he wishes to talk to his nephew Philip. Emily replied, saying he went to take his breakfast. On hearing this, Uncle James is not at all happy with the fact that Philip got up late and he is having his breakfast after the usual timing. James said that he needs to teach Philip so many things about life, and he tells her, "I have decided that the best thing he can do is come into the business at once." Aunt Emily was surprised to hear that. She warned her husband that Philip is no longer that same little boy that he must be thinking about. The uncle replies confidently, saying, "Naturally, he'll fall in with my wishes because he has a trump card." Now, what is that trump card? All the money of Philip is still under the control of his Uncle James because according to Philip's father's will, Philip can get them only after he attains the age of 25 years. And Philip has to listen to his uncle. Therefore, Uncle James is very confident about this matter. Aunt Emily once again warns her husband that somehow Philip has changed after being in the army, but Uncle James does not seem to care. He was waiting for Philip, sitting by the fireside, reading the newspaper. Gradually, he dozes off, and slowly he falls into a very deep sleep. Then he started dreaming. In his dream, he saw that Philip entered the room. From the dining hall, his uncle complains about him getting up late and not being punctual, unlike what an army should be. In the meantime, Philip takes out his cigarette and starts smoking. Uncle James was surprised and gets infuriated seeing this disrespectful behavior of Philip, and demands him to get permission to smoke from his Aunt Emily, to which Aunt Emily just replied that it's not a problem. Now, James asked Philip to join the family jam business, to which Philip flatly denied, saying he wants to be an architect. Then gradually, they started a heated argument. Philip started demanding his money so that he can live a separate life away from his uncle without being disciplined by him. His uncle replied back saying that he will never give a penny to him until he reaches the age of 25 years. Then Philip, though he was still 23 years, started claiming that he was already 25 years. His uncle was shocked and he asked, "How did that happen?" Then Philip started explaining, saying that it happened during the war at Somme. In the war at Somme, fighting the German soldiers, he narrated about how maturedly and how wisely he handled the situation at hand when his commander was captured by the enemies and he was next in command. He tried to prove that maturity lies in the mind and not in his age. But his uncle was not convinced and kept forcing him to join the family business. The argument went on and on and on, and at last, Philip got extremely enraged and rude and tried to use force on his Uncle James. What did he do? He gets so rough with his uncle that he started threatening him, taking a revolver and a bomb on his hand, saying that the revolver has killed around 20 Germans. His uncle gets terrified and told him not to use force. Uncle James, to which Philip replies to his uncle, saying, "We use force to put down force." Uncle James was threatening him to join the family business by using the power of the purse. That is why out here, Philip is trying to put down that force. He is trying to use the power of his weapon to put that force down. The uncle gets so terrified before Philip that he surrenders and agrees to do whatsoever Philip wants him to do. Then Philip leaves the room. At that point of time, Uncle James woke up from his sleep. He sees about the room and realizes that it was just a dream because he was still in his chair with the newspaper in his hand and sitting by the fireside. And coincides exactly his dream when Philip enters the room. Then their conversation starts, and this time their conversation was totally the opposite of what he has dreamt. Philip takes the permission of his uncle to smoke, and in contrast to the dream, his uncle tells him that he don't have to take permission to smoke. At this, Philip was thankfully surprised. Uncle James is much terrified from within, but he hides his fear and went on to ask what he wishes to do since he is back home now. And Philip replies that he don't have any plans so far. This time, Uncle James asked him if he would want to be an architect, and Philip was surprised, thinking why on earth would he want to be an architect, and his uncle was wondering why he asked him that. His uncle asked him decently if he would be interested to join the family business, and Philip readily agrees to join as suggested by his uncle. Philip does not demand anything as Uncle James has dreamt of. The closing sentence of Philip leaves the readers thinking if it was really a dream with Uncle James or some sort of trick played upon him by Philip about the manager at the business when he said, "Perhaps I'd better bring my revolver in case he isn't." After Philip left the room, Uncle James looks back into the room, thinking if it was a dream or reality. It remains in the dark. So with that, we come to the end of the summary of the play. Now let's discuss some of the character analysis in the drama. The first character is Philip. Philip is a youth of 23 who just returned home from war after 4 years. He is a carefree and joyful sort of person. He seems to be deeply attached to his Aunt Emily, while he is not much comfortable in the company of his Uncle James. This is because Uncle James is a very strict and disciplined man. The character of Philip is all about proving what a man can do, provided he is confident and knows the right way of using force. Philip is the hero of the youth, an ideal personality that knows how to manage things as well as to control. Now proceeding to the next character, that is Uncle James. Uncle James is Philip's uncle and he is his guardian. He is a weak personality. However, he is severe and strictly disciplined person. He wishes to dominate his family with almost no liberty. He makes decisions for all his family members regardless of the fact they like his decisions or not. Philip, his nephew, has been entrusted to his guardianship. He knows that Philip is a carefree sort of person, therefore he wants to control him, though we cannot deny his fatherly affection and care for Philip. Yet the way he deals with him is not at all appreciable for the readers. Now proceeding to the next character sketch, Aunt Emily. Aunt Emily, she is the most loving character in the play. She cared for Philip much and understands him in every way, and realizes that he has grown so much being in the army. She notices the change in Philip, the way he became quite matured and confident in his own way. The next character is Mary. Mary is the parlor maid, and she is one character who is there but doesn't have much of a say here. She only follows the decorum and the discipline of the rule of the house. Next is Mrs. Higgins. Mrs. Higgins is a character that replicates Uncle James's character, a disciplinarian in her own rights. She is a great cook, no doubt. She runs her kitchen the way a major in the army would possibly order and commands. She makes sure her job is secure. So that's the character analysis. We have already discussed about the theme of generation gap before we began the play. So the second theme of the drama is theme of war. The society gets frustrated and shocked when the war keeps on affecting their lives. It changes not only physical dimensions but also the mental, social, ethical, and personal lives of a society. The playwright has played upon the character of Uncle James to show how a war has spoiled a youthful boy, and what values are expected of him. by his father like uncle. The writer shocks us with the technique of a dream. The bewildered Uncle James terrifies us of what horror is played in the war, since the character of James uses severity with the weak. Hence the character of Philip, a war-spoiled youth, wishes to use force to put down force, a lesson learned in the trenches. The parent, Uncle James, in this case, gets humiliated with what it idealized, with the notions of war and how it paid. So students, with that we come to the end of our lesson for today. Thank you so much for your time here. Stay safe.